So, how long has America been a democracy? What is a democracy? Is a democracy a governmental system or a social system that is governed by the rules that say everyone has a vote? So, if a country only permits and allows a democratic process for only some of its citizens, but then rejects a democratic process, prevents other certain members and citizens of that country and society a democratic process, then the country is not democratic. There's got to be another word for that.
If it weren't for blacks, there wouldn't be a democracy at all.
Well, we know how we got democracy. It was through a decades-long black resistance struggle called the Civil Rights Movement. That is a black rights struggle. So you may not like the framing, but what I can tell you is the Double V for Victory campaign was black people were fighting in an army. They were going overseas. They were dying to liberate other countries and then coming home and being lynched for wearing their uniform. They were coming home and they could not vote. They were coming home and they could see German prisoners of war going into restaurants and being served where they could not be served.
I completely agree with all of that.
Right, but you want to treat that as a marginal to the American story. But you can't call yourself the greatest democracy and the greatest democratizing force in the country while violently and brutally suppressing democracy at home. And that's what happened for millions of American citizens.
Here's where,
I mean, just because some old white dudes wrote the word democracy on a piece of paper a couple hundred years ago doesn't mean it's technically a democracy. You know, it's one thing to have ideals. It's one thing to want something to be a democracy, and it's another thing to actually look at the living, tangible practices, policies, behaviors, attitudes of the country people, the leadership, the government agencies and elected officials, the policies that are made, the laws that have been made. Like, you got to factor in all that. Let's define what democracy literally means and then compare that definition to what is really going on. Let's not be naive.